So, as the artist, we've decided what our focal point is going to be, and we're going to make our best sort of ability to be able to present that focal point with weight so that the player's eye is drawn to that. But in addition to that, we're also going to have some helpers here in the scene. So the first one is this concept of guiding lines. Now here, as you can see, we've got a number of sort of ways that sort of things are in alignment in order to sort of point us at this focal point. So this character's big feather pen right here is kind of the most obvious one. So let me erase those lines for a second. As you can see, the feather draws this line directly at this this character here, and then there's a number of other lines here. The character's finger. We've got some alignment of these building edges. You know, obviously not every single line is drawing to this point of this person, but there are quite a lot of alignments here that are sort of coming together on this this character to emphasize the fact that this is the focal point. Another type of focal guide is framing. Now this scene actually doesn't really have a great example of framing, so we're going to look at that a little bit later on, how we do that. But we do have, I think, some here. So let's see, we'll go back a little bit. We've got sort of this page sort of has some sort of framing around it. We've got these red houses that are sort of surrounding her, creating this sort of like a picture frame sort of thing. We've got these characters around her. We've got sort of a dark shape around here. Like I said, not a perfect example of framing here, but just, I think, enough to sort of get the concept across here. And last is element orientation. So obviously, we said earlier that that weight, there's a lot of weight to things that are sort of facing us. So obviously our orientation comes into play here. But what about the, what are other characters looking at? What are the environment sort of pointing at? And as you can see here, a lot of the buildings have their faces sort of directed at this focal point character. They've got this building, sort of pointing out here. This main character, this big character up here, they may not be looking directly here. That would be even stronger of a draw to this point, but their face is sort of directed this way. Their attention is sort of divided this way. And then we've got all of these little skeleton characters also. I missed that one up there. There's one up there. That are sort of directed their attention here. And all of that is coming together to tell the viewer here that they are looking at something that has value. So let's look at a few examples talking about focal point and focal guides. This image right here, Lonely Town by Shi Yao, is, I'm not sure if this was made for a game or not, but it definitely feels like a game. It feels like an Assassin's Creed or something like that. And what I like about this image, as opposed to what we were showing in the previous image, yes, we do have a character here, but it's not, this character, I don't think, at least I'm not reading this as a focal point here. I don't know about you, but so a lot of times in art, in photography, we're looking at human beings sort of being the focal point. But when we're talking about levels, most of the time we're talking about how do architectural shapes, natural shapes, draw us to focal points. And usually in video games, the characters are moving around. And of course that it can be true that you'll have statues, sort of human figures in stasis like that will draw attention and do have a lot of weight, just like human characters. But those are sort of the exception to the rule. So let's look at this space right here. So to me, and maybe you have a different opinion here, because a lot of times, I mean, looking at art, it's subjective. But you know, as the designer, I could say very well that essentially that this door right here is kind of what what I imagine that the artist here was going for as far as a focal point. Now, let's go over a couple of reasons why that is. So obviously size is not a big part of it. This is not a very large object. So if we're talking about weight, but and perceived mass is not the case as well. But there is a lot of detail over right here that is drawing my eye, at least over into this kind of area. Let's see, the colors go from sort of, as you can see in the peripheral here, which is sort of more in the blues, down into the reds and the yellows, and the brighter colors are over here, drawing my attention. Familiarity, another weight factor. Obviously, the woman here is very sort of familiar as human form, but I'm also looking at sort of ladders. They're sort of drawing my attention, but also doors and windows, and very much to see if I was playing this, I could see the possibility of actually going through that door. So that's definitely drawing my attention there. Utility, obviously, ladders, doors, things like that have a lot of utility. And let's see, and contrast. As you, I mean, as I was saying before, like very bright, very dark. But let's talk about sort of focal guides as well. So in the previous space, I skipped over spatial depth. So that's actually what's most important about this particular scene is the spatial depth. And why, when I was talking about it having weight, it definitely has a lot of weight here. It basically, this spatial depth, and maybe even up here, but sort of has a lot of sort of meaning and purpose to it, and especially utility in game. I can move into that space. There's less access for it here. So yes, it's basically spatial depth is playing a huge part of the weight of this central area right here. Okay, so but now let's talk about the focal guides here. So this actually has a very good example of how we do framing. So, you know, this could, if we were presenting this door, we could do that in a lot of different ways. Maybe this door was on the other side of a large square, and we could have a lot of width to this scene. But what we're doing right here, what the artist is doing, having a wall that's very closely aligned to our right side, a wall on our left side, it's very specifically directing our focus towards something that's here in the middle. We can't look to the far left, and we can't look around this corner. From this perspective, we're seeing exactly what the artist wants to see, and we're seeing like these dark shapes around here sort of focus us in. We've got these vertical lines, these ladders. We've got this clothesline right here. We've got these shadows. Everything's sort of like creating this kind of nice picture frame around the object the player is drawing, sorry, the designer is drawing our attention to. We've got a lot of guiding lines here that are doing the same thing. So obviously this platform here, we've got these platforms that essentially we have a convergence of perspective kind of in this general area. More lines over here, orientation of elements. This wall is pointing in, this wall is pointing in, this platform is pointing down, this platform is sort of pointing directly this way. So there's a lot going on here that can essentially come together and create sort of a focal point on this door right here. So here's concept art from the movie Tangled by Kevin Nelson. So this one's a little bit more complicated. It doesn't feel quite as obvious what the point of the focal point is here. And in fact, I think it might be open to interpretation, which I think is absolutely just fine as far as layout design goes. So bending the rule a little bit here, but maybe I want to present to the player with a couple of different options here for what their next step could go to. So let's talk a little bit about what are possible focal points here. Now, I think for me, the most obvious one here and what draws me the most to is this sort of this doorway here and kind of this archway. And we've got this like this clock here that's kind of drawing me in, and obviously this archway is kind of in the center of the overall picture, so that's giving it a lot of weight as well. We've got a lot of spatial depth here. We've got some nice framing here. So this tower, these buildings right here are sort of framing this. we've got a lot of sort of guiding lines here, a lot that's sort of drawing us here, but at the same time, we've also got this fountain is definitely a point of interest. That's, we got this nice light spilling in on here, so some guiding lines to here, and there's extra sort of detail here that's kind of drawing my eye. Then we got this big tower here also, which has a lot of detail to it, and this awning. It seems like the artist is sort of drawing our attention to this as well. So, you can have competing elements in here in any sort of image. But in general, it does kind of work better, like I was saying, to have sort of a central focal element. And I think that this centerpiece right here is kind of the focal element for this image.